No one is talking about this, and yet it might be one of the most important moves Mathew Darche made in terms of the success of the Islanders this season. And we're going to break it down on this episode of Islanders Digest. There is so much to be excited about with the Islanders when it comes to this preseason. In particular, you have Matthew Schaefer trying to compete for a roster spot. Maxim Shabanov and Callum Ritchie also trying to compete, with Shabanov attempting to make the Islanders top six. And of course, this is a huge story because if the Islanders can get a boost in the top six's production, that is going to mean a lot for this team. But let's be real, the top six was not the only problem with the Islanders last season. It was a major problem, but there were also several other critical issues with this roster, and I feel like a lot of people are not focusing on one player the Islanders brought in who is a clear solution to that previous problem, and that is Emil Heineman. The Islanders traded for Emil Heineman from the Montreal Canadiens in exchange for Noah Dobson. In addition, the Islanders also got 2 first-round picks, and we've been talking about those 2 first-round picks all summer long. Look, there's no denying the Islanders completely aced those picks, bringing home Victor Eklund and Kashawn Aitchison. Kashawn Aitchison has been turning a lot of heads in rookie camp. There is zero shot that he will actually make the Islanders, but there is a chance that he potentially plays in a preseason game. And the way he's looking in terms of his shooting ability and just his physicality, he is looking like a stud defenseman for years to come. But in the excitement of these 2 prospects, who admittedly are going to be bigger players likely in the future, there has not been enough of a focus on Emil Heineman. And Emil Heineman can definitely go a long way in solving a problem the Islanders have now had for a while, which is the 4th line. And I know some people are rolling their eyes. They don't quite understand the value of a good 4th line. And for the record, as Islander fans, we should. We understand how good the Islanders were when they really had their identity line with Casey Ziquez, Cal Clutterbuck, and Matt Martin. And even though Matt Martin has just recently retired, and before that it had only been 2 years since Cal Clutterbuck had retired, it's been a long time since the Islanders have really had an effective 4th line. And I think Emil Heineman, first of all, he does have the potential to be more than a 4th liner, but for next season, especially starting out, having a player like this gives the Islanders a chance to finally, once again, have a really effective 4th line. And when we're talking about the Islanders, as we're going to go in just a bit, as a team, let's be real, they don't have the best first line in the NHL. They don't have the best second line in the NHL. They have a pretty good third line. But for this team to be competitive next season, and I believe they can be competitive, it's going to take a 4-line effort. And I felt like it was the same case last season. And let's face it, having Oliver Wahlstrom on your 4th line, I had Liam Foudy, Julien Gauthier playing games, was an absolute mess. So being able to finally fix this problem and have a player who can really be effective on the 4th line is so huge, because looking at Emil Heineman's first season, full season in the NHL for Montreal last year, and by the way, Montreal fans absolutely rave about this player. That's how you know you got a good player, when a team trades away a 4th line player for a star defenseman, and the fans can't stop talking about how they are going to miss Emil Heineman and what he brought to the game. Points wise, he had 10 goals, which is pretty solid for the minutes he played, and 8 points in all. He had 8 assists, I apologize. In total, he had 18 points for the Montreal Canadiens in 62 games. Keep in mind, he did have a car incident where he got hit by a car, so he really wasn't playing fully healthy for the full season. He is completely better now. There's nothing to worry about that in terms of future. And he is a 23-year-old player. So when it comes to those statistics, there definitely is more upside with this player. But even if he doesn't score too much more points for the Islanders, and for the record, I do think he is going to have a pretty decent uptick in terms of points. This is a player who brings so much more than just scoring, and this is really something the Islanders need in their lineup. They need more players who are hard to play against, and that is exactly what Emil Heineman is. Darche said when talking about why he traded for Emil Heineman, we see potential. He's a strong kid that skates great. He has a rocket of a shot. If you look at his goals, it's a high velocity shot that can score. We see a lot of potential in this player. And one of the big key takeaways when it comes to Emil Heineman definitely is that speed. The Islanders are a player who a lot of the players in the organization are older. As a result, they are a slower team on average. And having more players on all four lines that are really able to push the pace a bit more and really mask the fact that the Islanders have several slower players in the lineup is really important. And more importantly, when you look at his statistics, this is a significantly above average fourth liner. This is a guy who really, as he continues to progress in the NHL, is likely going to eventually be a third line player. But for next season with the Islanders, this is exactly who you want to be on your fourth line, and I'm really excited to see if he can potentially take more of a penalty killing role. Now, so far in training camp, he has not done that, but I think that's definitely something that Patrick Waugh is going to explore as the season goes on. And just taking a look at his statistics, one thing that really stands out, this is a player who is not going to get scored against when he's on the ice, which I think is very important. The biggest thing when it comes to a fourth line is not getting scored against. In my opinion, you can have a fourth line that really doesn't put up any offense, and as long as they're keeping the other team from scoring, that's fine. That was a big thing that Matt Martin, Casey Cizikas, and Cal Clutterbuck did. You can put them out against the other team's top line, and they would prevent them from scoring. Now, I'm not saying this new fourth line for the New York Islanders is going to be quite that good, at least not right away. But if you look at who the Islanders now have on their fourth line compared to who was there last year, Heineman and Siplikov, centered by Casey Cizikas, this line has the chance to have a lot of potential. And when you talk about what the Islanders need to go right for next season to end up in the playoffs, I know this might sound crazy, but I think one of the most important things is going to be how good their fourth line is. Yes, we know Horvat is going to score on the first line, and the first line is going to be a below average first line. That is nothing against Bo Horvat, but drew in Horvat Shabanov, and I'm really curious to see what Shabanov can provide. But even if Shabanov does turn out to be a star player in the NHL, this is not one of the best first lines in the NHL. I'm not delusional. Barzal, Palmieri, Anders Lee is a very solid second line, but again, it is nothing that really blows you out of the water, and more importantly, in terms of the top six, I don't think it makes up for the production that other teams are going to be getting from their first line. I think the best case scenario for the Islanders' top two lines is Bo Horvat really having a 70-ish point season, and Matt Barzal potentially bouncing back to his 80-point form, and that's great, but being led by 80 and 70 points is not going to get the Islanders back into the playoffs. That is, unless they get significant contributions from the bottom six. And this is where I think the Islanders can be a really unique team. When you look at other teams and their puckpedias, the Islanders' top six does not jump off the page. But the bottom six does, because Heineman is a player who on most teams you can really see him playing up in the lineup a bit more, at least on the third line. And Siplikov is a player who you can also see playing a lot more minutes. Just taking a quick look at what Siplikov did last season, this is a player who was very effective, putting up 35 points. Again, keep in mind, for half of last season, he was playing on a third and fourth line role. So for him to be able to produce was very impressive. Now, it was at a lower clip, but as he continued to play lower line minutes, he did continue to improve. And Siplikov is another player who I believe is not going to be a fourth liner all season. In fact, another thing that's really important about Heineman and Siplikov is a lot of Islander fans want the Islanders to make moves this season. At the very least, people say they want the Islanders to trade Lee. And if you're going to move Lee, that means you have to have somebody that comes up in the lineup. And I think this is another example of where Heineman can really shine later in the year and perhaps even end this season up earning more minutes. But to start the season, having Heineman, Cizikas, and Siplikov as your fourth line, I think this is one of the best fourth lines in the league. And it's one of those fourth lines where I don't really think it's a fourth. It's almost more like a second, third line. And this is why I think this is the Islanders' path into making the playoffs. They almost have two second lines and two third lines. you're not going to outscore the other team's top six with your top six. But if your bottom six can outscore the other team's bottom six and you just kind of stay even with the other team's top six, that's a recipe to win a lot of games. And when we look back at the Islanders when they were successful, they were never dominating teams with their top players. Where the Islanders really won games and really grinded out playoff series was having a very effective fourth line. And I'm really excited to see them get back to this. Now, one question I do have is how much we're going to get out of Casey Ziquez. To be honest, I feel like he has been beginning to fade as a center in the NHL. I do think he still is capable. And for the record, if you want to rejuvenate Casey Ziquez, this is the best lineup to play him with. Playing with a player like Heineman who has speed, who can really make up for the fact that Casey Ziquez really isn't able to skate after pucks, at least as much as he used to. And then in addition, Sipilkov to really throw the body around, really allow Casey Ziquez to not have to do as much as that now that he is 34. I think this is a perfect trio for the Islanders. And as Stefan Rosser pointed out, Emil Heineman has a lot of that Clutterbuck type play to his game. We're talking prime Clutterbuck, who was a fourth liner, but who's also able to contribute 15 goals from the fourth line. This is exactly what the Islanders need. And if Emil Heineman is able to provide 15 plus goals on the fourth line for the New York Islanders, which I think really is not that much to ask if they're giving him consistent playing time, especially considering he was almost on pace for that last season in a year where he dealt with a significant injury. I think this is going to be a much bigger move for the New York Islanders. And I know it's not flashy. I know a lot of fans don't like to hear about fourth liners, but if this Islanders team is going to be a good team, and I do believe they can be a good team next season, this is going to be a huge part of it. This is not going to be a team that is carried by certain players. It's going to have to be a team that it's bigger than the sum of its parts. And I think Emil Heineman is going to be a big part of that, and I am super excited to see what he does next season. Let me know in the comments what you think about Emil Heineman. What are your expectations for him next year? Again, I'm really excited to see what this player can do. I think he does have the potential if there are trades or injuries. That's the other thing you do have to mention. Realistically, this lineup is not staying healthy the full year. I think it'd be insane to think an Islanders lineup, especially with recent history, is going to stay completely healthy. But with that in mind, having players like this on your fourth line able to move up definitely makes you less vulnerable to injuries. While last year, another big issue was Duclair got hurt in the first week of the season, and that pretty much ended the season. Although the Islanders still kind of stuck around, they were never the same after that. And I think at the very least, this Heineman Heineman trade also adds a lot of insurance in a position where I think they really needed it. That's going to do it for this episode of Islanders Digest. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm your host, Patrick Nilan. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.